I mean, I'm coming from like a First Nation standpoint, and you know, I'm in this to tell these kinds of stories, but I see the merit in non-Indigenous people also wanting to help out with these kinds of stories. Definitely make sure that you have Indigenous voices. Don't have the first quote in your story be a white person. Yeah, make sure that you have women, make sure you represent two-spirited people, you know, make sure you bring in all these different aspects so that you don't leave anyone out. And that's not saying that you need to like have a checklist for every single article. Do I have this voice? Do I have this voice? You don't need to do that at all. Just make sure that, you know, you don't overshadow what the community's trying to say. You know, don't be a story taker. Like, you don't want to be a story taker. And so many times journalists come into Indigenous communities and they just take stories and they don't give anything back. Like, just like coming in and just grabbing it and going for their quotes, for the headlines, you know, calling up that mom whose daughter died. Things in journalism, like, it's different because, you know, you're supposed to have like journalistic ethics and standards talk about, you know, being separate from your sources and being like objective. And like, I'm pretty young to speak to this, so I don't want to go too much into detail, but that's different with Indigenous communities. Not saying that you can't, like, not saying you should make them your best friends. It's hard not to get close to sources sometimes, and you do need to distance yourself, but especially with Indigenous sources, there's no reason to not act like a human, you know? Don't act like a one-sided reporter just trying to get something. Like, just be a human about it. It'll just make it easier and create more trust. Like, that's the most important thing when you enter into these kinds of stories, is creating a bond of trust. And yeah, many Indigenous people have gone through a lot. Every single person is touched by the trauma of residential school to one degree or another. There's intergenerational trauma that runs right through our blood, and there's a lot of layers behind every single person, so you just have to be really sensitive when you're talking to them. I'm not saying it's like holding a glass flower, but just, you know, be sensitive, be kind, be caring, don't take stories, be respectful, you know? And then if you're like that, then you should be fine. Yeah. Definitely, like, try to do internships for CBC Indigenous. That always helps. There's ABTN as well, and they offer internships as well if you're just kind of starting to get into it as an Indigenous journalist. If you're interested in Indigenous issues as a non-Indigenous journalist, you know, like, just educate yourself. You know, read the Reporting in Indigenous Communities guidebook. It's great, it's simple, it's straightforward. It says things that even as an Indigenous journalist, I can be like, oh wow, I should probably think about that a bit more, you know? And yeah, just read CBC Indigenous, read APTN, see what's going on. Just know how these stories are kind of being told, what stories are being told, and just take note of that and really look at that. And, you know, definitely try to cross-compare it with other mainstream media sources and just see how their coverage is. There's lots of independent Indigenous magazines and papers that, you know, you can start writing for. Like, just send them a pitch, find them online. Muskrat Magazine, Red Rising, you know, they're out there if you don't have any experience doing this kind of work. And that's a great place to start.